I'm going to be reading more of The Hobbit for you guys. I really do think you guys will enjoy it. It's very good. Bit of a slow start, but it definitely picks up. But let's keep going. "Very pretty," said Gandalf, "but I have no time. This morning I am looking for someone to share in an adventure, and it's very difficult to find anyone." "I should think so in these parts. We are plain, quiet folk and have no use for adventures. Nasty, disturbing, uncomfortable things. Make you late for dinner. Can't think what anyone sees in them," said our Baggins, and stuck one thumb behind his braces and blew out another, even bigger smoke ring. Then he took out his morning letters and began to read, pretending to take no more notice of the old man. He stood, leaning on his stick and gazing at the Hobbit without saying anything, until Bilbo got quite uncomfortable and even a little cross. "Good morning," he said at last. "We don't want any adventures here, thank you. You might try over the hill or across the water." By this, he meant that the conversation was at an end. "What a lot of things you do use good morning for," said Gandalf. "Now you mean that you want to get rid of me, and that it won't be good until I move off." Not at all, my dear sir. Let me see, I don't think I know your name." Yes, my dear sir, and I do know your name, Mr. Bilbo Baggins. And you do know my name, though you don't remember that I belong to it. I'm Gandalf, and Gandalf means me. To think that I should have lived to be good morninged by Belladonna Took's son if I was selling buttons at the door. Gandalf. Gandalf, good gracious me, not the wandering wizard that gave old Took a pair of magic diamond studs that fastened themselves and never came undone until ordered. Not the fellow who used to tell such wonderful tales at parties about dragons and goblins and giants, and the rescue of princesses and the unexpected luck of the widow's sons. Not the man that used to make such particularly excellent firework. I remember those. Old Took used to have them on Midsummer's Eve. Splendid. They used to go up like great lilies and snapdragons and laburnums of fire and hang in the twilight of all evening. You will notice already that Mr. Baggins was not quite so posy like he liked to believe. Also that he was very fond of flowers. Dear me, he went on, not the Gandalf who was responsible for so many quiet lads and lasses going off into the blue for mad adventures, anything from climbing trees to visiting elves, or sailing in ships, sailing to other shores. Bless me, life used to be quite you used to upset things badly in these parts once. I beg your pardon, but I have no idea you were still in business. And where else should I be? Said the wizard. All the same, I am pleased to find you remember something about me. You seem to remember my fireworks kindly. At any rate, that is not without hope. Indeed, for your old grandfather Took's sake, and for the sake of poor Belladonna, I will give you what you asked for. I beg your pardon? I haven't asked for anything, said our Hobbit. Yes, you have. Twice now. My pardon, I give it to you. In fact, I will go so far as to send you on this adventure. Very amusing for me, and very good for you, and profitable too. Very likely, if you ever get over it. Sorry, I don't want any adventures. Thank you. Not today. Good morning. Please come to tea any time you like. Why not tomorrow? Come tomorrow. Goodbye. And with that, the Hobbit turned and scuttled inside his round green door, and shut it as quickly as he dared. Not to seem rude, wizards, after all, are wizards. What on earth did I ask him to tea for? He said. As he went to the pantry, he had only just had breakfast, but he thought a cake or two and a drink of something would do him good after this fright. Gandalf, in the meantime, was still waiting outside the door. He was still waiting outside the door and laughing long but quietly. After a while, he stepped up and, with the spike of his staff, scratched a queer sign on the Hobbit's green door. Then he strode away, just about the time when Bilbo was finishing his second cake and beginning to think that he had escaped adventures very well. The next day, he had almost forgotten about Gandalf. He did not remember things very well, unless he put them down on his engagement tablet. Like this: Gandalf tea Wednesday. Yesterday, he had been too flustered to do anything of the kind. Just before tea time, there came a tremendous ring at the front door bell. And then he remembered. He rushed and put on the kettle and put on another cup and saucer and an extra cake or two and ran to the door. "I'm so sorry to keep you waiting," he was going to say, when he saw that it was not Gandalf at all. It was a dwarf, with a blue beard tucked into a golden belt, and very bright eyes under his dark green hood. As soon as the door opened, he pushed inside just as if he had been expected. He hung his cloak on the nearest peg, and "Dwalin, at your service," he said with a low bow. "Bilbo Baggins at yours," said the hobbit, too surprised to ask any questions for the moment. When the silence that followed had become uncomfortable, he added, "Am I just about to take tea? Oh, sorry, I am just about to take tea. Pray come and have some with me." A little stiff, perhaps, but he meant it kindly. And what would you do if an uninvited dwarf came and hung things up on your wall without a word of explanation? They had not been at the table long. In fact, they had hardly reached the third cake, when there came another, even louder ring at the bell. "Excuse me," said the hobbit, and off he went to the door. "So, you have got here at last." That's what he was going to say to Gandalf this time. But, once again, instead of Gandalf, there was a very odd-looking dwarf, with a white beard and a scarlet hood, and he too hopped inside as soon as the door was open, just as if he had been invited. "I see they have begun to arrive already," he said, as soon as he caught sight of Dwalin's green hood hanging up. He hung his red one next to it, and "Balin, at your service," he said, with his hand on his breast. "Thank you," said Bilbo with a gasp. It was not the correct thing to say, but "they have begun to arrive" had flustered him badly. He liked visitors, but he liked to know them before they arrived, and he preferred to ask them himself. He had a horrible thought that the cakes might run short, and then he, as the host, he knew his duty and stuck it to however painful. He might have to go without. "Come along in and have some tea," he managed. "A little beer would suit me better, if all the same, to you, my good sir," said Balin, with a white beard, "but I don't mind some cake. Seed cake, if you have any." "Lots," Bilbo found himself answering, to his own surprise. And he found himself scuttling off to the cellar to fill a pint, and then to the pantry to fetch 2 beautiful round seed cakes, which he had baked that afternoon for his supper morsel. When he got back, Balin and Dwalin were talking at the table like old friends. As a matter of fact, they were brothers. Bilbo plumped down the cake in front of them when a loud ring came at the bell, again, and then another ring. Gandalf for certain this time, he thought, as he puffed along the passage. But it was not. It was 2 more dwarves, both with blue hoods, silver belts, and yellow beards, and each of them carried a bag of tools and a spade. That's a shovel. In they hopped as soon as the door began to open. Bilbo was hardly surprised at all this time. "What can I do for you, my dwarves?" he said. "Kili, at your service," said one, and "Fili," added another. And they both swept off their blue hoods and bowed. "At yours and your families," replied Bilbo, remembering his manners this time. Excuse me. "Dwalin and Balin are already here, I see," said Kili. "Let us join the throng." "Throng?" thought Mr. Baggins. "I don't like the sound of that. I really must sit down for a minute and collect my wits, and have a drink." He must have had only a sip in the corner while the 4 dwarves sat around the table and talked about the mines and gold and troubles with the goblins, about depredations of dragons, and lots of other things he did not understand, and did not want to, for they sounded much too adventurous. When a ding-dong-a-ling-dang, his bell rang again, as if some naughty little hobbit boy was trying to pull the handle off. "Someone at the door," he said, blinking. "Some 4, I should say, by the sound," said Fili. "Besides, we saw them coming along behind us in the distance." The poor little hobbit sat down in the hall and put his head in his hands, and wondered what had happened, and what was going to happen, and whether they would all stay to supper. Then the bell rang again, louder than ever, and he had to run to the door. It was not 4, after all, it was 5. Another dwarf had come along while he was wandering in the hall. He had hardly turned the knob before they all inside, bowing and saying, "At your service," one after another. Dori, Nori, Ori, Oin, and Gloin were their names. And very soon 2 purple hoods, a grey hood and a brown hood, and a white hood, were hanging on the pegs, and off they marched with the broad hands stuck in their gold and silver belts to join the others. Already it had almost become a throng. Some called for ale, some for porter, and one for coffee, and all of them for cakes. So the hobbit was kept busy for a while. I'll stop there. I'm going to be filming the exit on a separate video because the other one was a little too long. However, I'll just cut it into the original. But yeah, I'm going to be stopping there. I hope you guys are doing okay. I hope you guys are spending time with your family and having fun in any way you can, indoors, safely, obviously. And I hope that, you know, you guys are able to enjoy this. I loved this book growing up, and it taught me quite a few things. It's mainly, you know, I guess, message is that no matter how small someone is, no matter how insignificant they may think themselves or seem, it shouldn't matter. Even the smallest of people can change the world. And what we're going through right now, we can all just do the little things: stay inside, limit ourselves, you know, with the outside world for a little bit. But just those small things, they'll get us out. We'll come back on top. So yeah, that was it for this one, and I can't wait to read for you guys again next week. See you guys.